If you've been following my channel for a while, you'll notice I've had a number of videos on the subject of gender issues, notably connected to feminism. And I've been fairly critical of feminism. I've tried to be open-minded in my approach and objective in my approach, but I've also made some fairly strong criticism of it. I stand by everything I've said. But in this video, I'm not talking so much about feminism so much as the men's rights movement, because I want to really make it clear to people who may be watching my channel that I don't regard myself as an MRA, and I want to explain why. And this, what I'm going to talk about, really highlights my reason why. A few days ago I joined a group on Facebook, well, I liked a group on Facebook called Feminism Debunked. Whenever I look at a group, I try to get a little bit of information about it to know what exactly it is I'm supporting. Anyway, I looked at the posts and it was talking about a lot of the hypocrisies of the feminist movement. For example, especially the flaws with the He for She campaign. And so I liked this page because I thought they were making a lot of good points. And they do make a lot of good points. If you check out this group on Facebook, it's not very big, it's 600 likes, but they make a lot of fair points. Unfortunately, there was one article, and it must be by the admin because it was posted by the title of the group, hence it must be the admin, about a law in California that is going to make a form of argument. He didn't specify what the name of this law was, but it's going to make a form of sort of arguing back a jailable offence, which is a very controversial issue because it's, for one thing, it's hard to define. In other words, if a man and woman are in a heated dispute, what it says basically is that, bear with me a second, I just lost this. Actually, no, sorry, I misquoted that. In California, apparently, it's now legal for women to kill men if they just have an idea that the man could beat them, if it's just a concept, if he raises his voice. So, in other words, homicide is justified for verbal discourse. Now, when he was making that point, I thought, yeah, this is just another example of how disgraceful this inequality is when it comes to justice. And I was going to sort of agree with him. But then he continued, and this is what he says. Fuck you women, you're the disease of this planet. You destroy everything, and still most men are totally in complete denial of what women do and how they prey and parasite on society. And it's basically a rant about women. Now I replied to this and I said, look, I agree with your posts about this law being absurd and blatantly unfair, but why on earth do you have to slander all women? Well, he's replied, and he just then gets a rant against me. He starts off predictably calling me a white knight. This is what some MRAs call male feminists. Now, I'm not a male feminist. Their concept of a white knight is a guy who just slavishly agrees with feminism in order to get laid. Anyone who can see my videos would know I'm very critical of feminism, and I made that clear in the post as well. So this guy just reacts by calling me a white knight. Then he goes on to have a bit of a rant. I didn't read all of it because it basically is just a rant. And I've just replied and said, look, this is precisely, your attitude is precisely why the men's rights movement does not have more support. Because, and this is a trend that I have noticed. By the way, someone pointed out that the group Women Against Feminism absolutely flies in the face of his claim. What he is doing is slandering all women. And I've seen this from MRAs before, and it pisses me off because their attitude is just as bad as radical feminists. Extreme MRAs are no better than radical feminists. They use exactly the same language, they're very divisive, they distort situations, and they just... I want nothing to do with them, because they are, in some cases, genuine misogynists. They do just hate women. I've seen it. This isn't something I'm just saying. I have seen it in posts like this. Now, if you want more, if you're an MRA and you want to try and raise more awareness of men's issues, then I would suggest rein in on these sort of people. Stand up to them, because that is exactly the sort of attitude that is going to put the wider public off. And all that's going to do is go in the hands of feminists who will say, oh look, MRAs hate women, and they'll just point to that and say this shows it. So really it's a case of radical feminists and radical MRAs, two sides of the same coin as far as I'm concerned, because they both slander and vilify the opposite gender, they both distort facts, and they both scaremonger and basically try to turn people against each other, and I really don't like it. Firstly, that is an insult to the many women who do oppose feminism and do speak out about its hypocrisy. It's an insult to them, and in some cases they've had personal abuse from feminists, so I think that's unfair. Plus, it's just not a good attitude to have. Hating half of humanity is blatantly stupid, and I really do wonder about these guys. Now, it could well be that they have had a very unpleasant personal experience. Maybe they've been denied child access and that sort of thing. If that's the case, I genuinely have sympathy for that. And I can understand them hating their ex-wife if she is the one responsible for putting them in that situation. I can understand that. But I would stop short of advocating hatred of all women. That is just an extreme position. Personally, I love women, and it is not because I'm a white knight. It's because that's just the way I feel. I should say, okay, not women, all women. I shouldn't say that. But what I mean is, generally I get on well with women, and I'm no feminist. So for him to reduce the argument that way is just the same sort of pedantic and narrow-minded attitude feminists take. So many feminists. So this just is an example of why I don't call myself an MRA, because the movement puts off the very people who are likely to support it. I think they would get a lot more support if they weren't so extreme in some of the rhetoric. And it's the same with Fathers for Justice. Now, they have a very, very good campaign, very important campaign, which is about basic right to parental custody, fair parental custody. That's great. But again, some of their tactics are just extreme and backfire, and they'll say things like there is no other choice. But when you do things like threaten to kidnap the Prime Minister's children, that is not going to win public support. Yes, it's a hard slog, but I just don't understand why you would use self-defeating methods that are going to turn the public against you. It makes no sense. And I do support a lot of the principles of these movements. Likewise, I support a lot of the issues regarding women's rights. But I stopped short of saying I'm a feminist, and I stopped short of saying that I'm an MRA, because I believe both movements are fundamentally divisive. I'm a human being, and as a human being, I care about innocent men and innocent women suffering, whether it be from discrimination, whether it be from a backward religion, whether it be from a biased justice system. So that's what I want to say, and I really wish like some MRAs could just get their head out of the sand and see that they are putting people off the movement. So it's up to moderate MRAs who don't hate women to actually come and rein these people in and say, look, you're giving this movement a bad image. We don't want extremists among us. But again, and by the way, I don't have a problem with a specific men's rights movement. It's not the principle of it I take issue with. It's the fact that just like the feminist movement, they're not really reining in on the extremists. And this isn't, this isn't a rare thing. I see this on most MRA groups, and it is very off-putting. Because despite all my views on feminism, if any man was to hurt or slander a woman I cared about, I would take issue with that man. So what I'm saying is, by all means stand up for men's rights, raise these issues, that's great. It's important in fact to raise them. But don't slander women in the process. Certainly not all women. Yeah, of course you can critique feminism, critique their flaws and the fact that they have such an abhorrent attitude towards men's rights. Fine. But don't slander all women. It's just, A, that's going to put women off who might support your campaign otherwise, and B, it's going to put off guys like me who really get worked up by the hypocrisy of feminism but do not hate women. I love women, and I hate the idea that this movement is going to be so divisive that it's going to give women the impression that they hate women. Just like feminism gives men the impression that it hates men. Moderate feminists say they don't, and probably moderate MRAs will go out of their way to say we're not anti-women, and I believe most of them aren't. But they're not doing enough to rein in on these sort of extremists. I believe they need to do more, because the movement really doesn't have that much support, and I believe it would have more if it didn't use this sort of divisive language. And by the way, this wasn't just some random troll, this was the admin of the group. That's what concerns me.